All right, good morning, everybody. Good morning. All right. So if I haven't met you yet, I'm Justin, one of the pastors here at the church, and I get to be with you on week 5 of our series. If you haven't been with us, our series is all about you and I have a relationship with money, and so let's make it the best, because it's not a relationship we can get out of, but it's really one where we have to make the most of it. And so today we're going to be talking about how do you grow old with money? How do you do it well? How do you do it faithfully over the years? And before we kind of really go there, what I want you to think about is when you think about the destination you want to arrive at, when you think about with your money, with your finances, where you want to be in the future, think about some of the things that come to mind for you. I want to give you a few broad buckets, but I think you'll resonate with one or multiple ones of these. You know, maybe it's peace. You think about where you want to be. You want to be a place of peace, where you have breathing room, where you don't feel like bills are just piling up. Maybe it's a place of freedom, where you feel like I'm not being controlled by debt or credit cards, but I have freedom when it comes to my finances. Maybe it's security, where you feel like, man, I want to be in the place where I can help others and my family's taken care of. Or maybe it's in purpose, where you really feel like, hey, I want to use my money for something greater than me, to give, to bless, to do other things. You know, I don't know what it is for you, but the thing with the destination that we're aiming at, the destination that we'd love to be at with our finances, is we're never going to get there just by accident. Just by hoping we get there one day, we're never going to get there. That really what happens is time magnifies our decisions. It magnifies our relationship with money. Because over time, those things we do daily, weekly, monthly, they compound. And as the more time goes by, if you were to zoom in at where you're at today and really look at that, it's really a product of the seeds you planted years prior that got you to where you are today. And this is an idea from the scriptures that it talks about many places, like Galatians chapter 6, verse 7 says this: "Don't be deceived, God is not mocked, for whatever one sows, that he will also reap." And it's the whole idea that, think about money as a seed, that the way you use it today will cause you to reap a certain harvest in the future. Where you are today is probably a result of some of those decisions that you planted years prior as well. And so the question really isn't where do you want to end up, but what are you doing today to get there? Are your decisions today aligned with where you want to get to tomorrow? Because that's really the challenge. There's so much of finances where we know it, but we don't do it. And so that's really why today I want to focus on 5 essentials, 5 things to put into practice today. Because if you don't, you're going to wind up at a different destination than I think you want to be on. You're probably going to wind up at a destination more with discontentment or with regret or with pain, rather than a place where you feel like you're in a place of freedom, of joy, of contentment. And so just to make it easy to remember, easy for me to remember, is we have this acronym START, okay? Because the thing I keep coming back to when I was preparing for today is if you don't start, you're not going to get there. And so these are 5 essentials that you and I need to practice every day, every week, every month that passes. These aren't just one-time decisions, but regular rhythms we have to incorporate into our lives. And so this first one is to spend less and save more. Culture wants us to believe, I can't afford to save because I need this money now. I need it for right now in the moment I'm in. I can't afford this. But really the truth is that saving today creates freedom and margin tomorrow. In Proverbs 21, notice what it says. "Precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it." So it gives a kind of a contrast here. A foolish man, somebody who just focuses on today, they consume, they devour everything they have. We see that all around us today because you go and you buy something without any thought of how you're going to pay for it sometimes, right? I want this today, so I can either buy now, pay later, I can use my credit card, I can figure that out down the road. I can just focus on today, on what I want or what I feel like I might need in this moment that I'm in. And that's what it says the foolish man does. He devours all that he has. He's just focused on today. But the wise do something different. They have precious treasure and oil in a wise man's dwelling. And really what it's giving a picture of is a wise man builds reserves that he saves for tomorrow. He puts something aside is the whole picture here. And what you may not catch is as it describes this wise man's dwelling. That word for dwelling is literally the word pasture. And what it's trying to paint for us is this picture of the destination this wise man is arriving at. It's a pasture, a place of security, of safety, of peace and provision. That's what the wise man is experiencing because he's saving some for tomorrow. He's building margin into what he does. And really, as you have breathing room, part of what it does is it gives you options for the future. You have decisions you can make tomorrow because you've built margin in and savings in today. Let me give you an example of that. I've known a lot of different couples over the years, and when they're starting out in marriage, who make very different decisions. There's some couples where when they start out in marriage, they just do what kind of everyone around them is doing. As their income grows, they just spend more, they increase their lifestyle. They're, not living extravagantly, but, if they want a new car, they're going to buy a new car. They can keep up with the payment. They're just thinking about today. So they're thinking, what's the house that I want today? They're buying it, even if it's like, it's going to be tight, but, we'll figure it out. We'll make it work. They do that. But then what I've seen happen sometimes in those cases is because they're not thinking of the seeds they're planting today, then kids come along. And the wife, the mom, is like, oh, I'd love to stay home with my kids in this season. But they don't realize the seeds they sowed in the earlier years made it so, hey, we can't afford for you not to work. You have to keep working because of the lifestyle we have, the bills we have to pay, the expenses we have, the car payments, all those things. And yet you have other couples that I've seen where they're not making way more money, the same amount of money, but they're making different choices. They're planting different seeds along the way. Things like, hey, we're going to do a little simpler vacation now, still get out, do something together, but it's going to cost less than maybe the people around us. We're going to still drive, cars that are going to get us where we need to go, but maybe we'll keep them an extra year or two, or maybe we'll buy some used cars instead of brand new ones. People who decide maybe we're going to rent a little longer, or we're not going to buy the house we can afford, but something a little bit smaller so we have more margin built in, so we have more options in the future. And what I've seen in many of those cases is those couples, they plant these seeds, and then years later they're like, okay, we can make this work. It's going to be tight. It's not going to be easy. But you know what? My spouse can stay home. They can take care of the kids for a few years while they're little and enjoy that time. Yes, we're not going to get to do everything we want to do, but we can make it work because we've planted these seeds years earlier. That's really part of what happens when we spend less and we save more. That saving really helps us prioritize that long term over the short term. And what I found interesting when I was preparing for today is what they found is when you fail to have margin, fail to save, it just creates stress. And it's almost like this stress cycle that you get in. You get stuck in this, and you get stuck in short-term thinking just as a result. And they've done a lot of research now on finance and behaviors, and it's stuff I kind of geek out on. Many of you would probably be like, that is boring. But here's what I thought was interesting, though, and hopefully you're with me on this. They found two things I particularly found striking. When you just get caught in this cycle of short-term thinking, of getting into debt, of just trying to get by and having no margin, they found that what happens in people's brains is the front part of your brain, that prefrontal cortex that controls long-term thinking, planning, the activity starts to go down, and your amygdala, that fight or flight part of your brain, the activity goes up. Because you're stuck in this just survival mode. I just got to get by. I just got to pay the bills. I just got to get through today. And you tend to make bad choices as a result. They found in another study with these sugarcane farmers in India, is they did studies prior to the harvest, and the harvest was usually like the 1 time a year, 2 times a year, when they would get all their income for the year. So as you can imagine, they were stressed, wondering, what are we going to earn? What are we going to get during this season? So they did some tests before the harvest and afterwards. Here's what they found. Before the harvest, their IQ was 13 points lower than it was after the harvest, because they were just so stressed about, what are we going to have? Are we going to have enough? I mean, it's equivalent to when you pull an all-nighter, and you've probably had to do that at one time or another for work, for school. How do you feel the next day? You feel terrible, right? That's not the day you want to make any important decisions, is it? You just want to get through the day and go to bed. But that's equivalent to how they felt because they had no margin. They were so stressed about what was going to be coming in. And so this is really the essential thing we need to start with. If we don't have margin, if we're not willing to fight for that, to start building some savings, we're going to always be stuck in just short-term thinking. And a simple definition I want to give you for savings that I found particularly helpful because, let's face it, probably in every couple here, there's one of you that's the saver, right? And if your spouse says, why are we saving money? Your response is, because we need to. Okay, we need to save. You're saving to save, right? There may not even be a purpose with it, but I need to save. It's important to me. But what I want to give you is this definition. Saving is deferred spending. It's setting aside resources now for a need you'll surely have later. Okay, think about that. So setting aside something now for a need you'll surely have later. So for instance, this could be setting aside money now because hey, in 5 years, I'm going to need to buy a new car. So instead of waiting and then getting a loan and paying interest on that, I'm just going to start saving today so that when that time comes, I have the money there. Or many of you probably for retirement. For decades down the road, there's going to be a gap between what I'm earning and what I may make with Social Security or pension or any of that later. So I need to save now for some needs I'm going to have in the future. Okay? So it's not just saving to save. There's a purpose with it. There's a reason you're doing this. You're setting aside some money now for a need you're going to have later. Let me give you two simple tips off of this. One is just start small. Proverbs 13 puts it this way. Dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. So it's just the whole idea. We want all the money at once. We want to gain a lot, earn a lot, have a lot quickly, but really the trick is to do it small, little by little, to make it a habit, to fight for it, whether it's $10 a week or whether it's 1% of your income, but you just start somewhere and fight to have that grow over time. Here's what will happen if you do that. Let's just say you're 30 years old. And you're like, I want to start saving. So I'm going to put $100 a month aside. And I'm going to do this for the next 35 years. What you'll find is at the end of 35 years, you'll have saved $42,000. Pretty good amount of money where I come from. You could probably buy a car for that, or at least half of a car, depending on your taste for stuff. So that's a lot of money. But if you earn interest along with that, so if you're saving it, earning some interest, look how dramatically that changes. You have over $130,000 at the end of these 35 years simply from earning. This is just based on 6%, nothing crazy, because I figured if you go 10%, you wouldn't believe the numbers you'd get. But it's just built on that simple habit, saving some little by little by little over time. And what's dramatic is you've earned more in interest than you initially saved as a result. But think about this in terms of what we said last week with debt. That interest on that credit card, that car payment, those things we just so easily say yes to, it works against us. So instead of us earning this interest, it moves in the opposite direction. I know years ago, my wife and I, a few years into our marriage, went through financial peace and kind of just learned a ton, but student loans was our big thing that we had. And I remember when it began to click for us because one year we got our interest statement for our student loans, and I think it was like $1,200. And I remember being kind of mad when I saw that because I thought, that's $1,200. That's a lot of money. I could spend on all kinds of different things, but it's just wasted, sending it to the bank, sending it to that lender. And it really, again, started me to realize this interest is working against me. I need to do all I can to pay this off, to get in a better place so I can move in the other direction. So start small. The other one is save for times of scarcity. In Proverbs chapter 6, it says it this way, go to the ant, O sluggard, and consider her ways and be wise. Without having any chief, officer, or ruler, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest. So ants realize this. There's going to be times of plenty, like the harvest, so they're going to gather extra and store it because they know there's other times a year there's not going to be an overabundance. And so they're saving for those just seasonal things that happen. They're saving for times of scarcity, which is something you and I need to do too. We need to be prepared because emergencies are going to come. Just in this size room, let's just say we have this whole section. Odds are in the next year, and this is not prophetic, I hope not, but in the next year, there's going to be a major financial event that's going to happen. Some unexpected bill, some car that's going to break down, some medical expense that's going to come up. There's going to be something. And what do you do when that does? Let's be honest. Most of the time, I got my credit card. I'll just use that. I'll figure out how to pay it off later. But it's such a different place to be if you're able to have something in savings, something as an emergency fund. So when that car transmission goes out, yes, you don't want to spend the money, but it's there. You can pull on it, and it lowers the stress so much more dramatically with that, with a health issue going on, any of those kinds of things. And so just for the ones that are super practical in the room, like me, if you don't even know where to start, just start with $1,000. If you don't have an emergency fund, I'd encourage you to start there. That'll cover most emergencies, but then you can build it from there. 3 to 6 months is typically what people say is a good rule of thumb. But on this first question of spend less, save more, ask yourself, are you consistently setting aside resources for the future, or are you just consuming everything you have today? Because that's going to lead to different destinations. Those are seeds that you're sowing today. So that's the S. The T, trust God, not money. Culture says if I just had more, I'd finally feel secure. If I just had more in the bank, I'd feel secure and safe. But really, security ultimately comes from God, not from the size of our bank account. Greg talked about on week 1, really the challenge and the reminder that we need to make sure we're trusting the blesser, not the blessing. That we need to make sure our focus stays in the right position. And that's really what we're talking about here. In the book of Proverbs, notice what it says. The name of the Lord is a fortified tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. The wealth of the rich is their fortified city. They imagine it a wall too high to scale. So it gives this contrast saying you can find your true security in the Lord. You're going to be safe. Or you can have this false sense of security by thinking, I got this money. Nothing can hurt me, nothing can harm me, and yet at some point, those walls are going to prove to be insufficient, that it's this false sense of security that some enemy is going to scale or is going to break through, is going to dig under. But it's not a new danger either. This is a danger to trust money that, has existed for thousands and thousands of years. In the book of Deuteronomy, you have Moses speaking to his people. They're getting ready to go into the promised land, and notice the warning he gives them. Before they go into this land of blessing, he says this, you may say to yourself, my power and the strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me. But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth and so confirms his covenant, which he swore to your ancestors as it is today. So he has this warning. You're going to go in and think, I've earned this all myself. All of this abundance, all this blessing is because of me. And he's saying, don't forget. Don't forget who it is that provided this, who it is that gave you the ability, who it is that led you to this place. And to place your trust there. And really that's why I think trusting God has to be a daily thing that we do. One of the practices we've encouraged you to do on multiple weeks is to make it a daily habit of gratitude. To think about what can I be grateful for today? Because when you focus on what you have rather than what others have or on what you wish you had, you're going to be much more grateful. You're going to be trusting God that he's providing for your needs much more than if you're focused on what everyone else has or what you wish you wanted and comparing yourself with others. And so make it a daily focus, a daily decision. Jesus reminded us about this same thing in the book of Matthew. He says, this is why I tell you not to worry about everyday life. Whether you have enough food or drink or enough clothes to wear, isn't life more than food in your body, more than clothing? Look at the birds. They don't plant or harvest or store food in barns, for your heavenly Father feeds them. Aren't you far more valuable to him than they are? Notice this. We get preoccupied with enough food, enough clothes. And he reminds us, think about just a little insignificant bird. God takes care of it. How much more so you and I for our needs, for the things that we need. He loves us. He cares for us to such a great degree more than just these small little birds of the field. And yet we get so focused, don't we, on kind of those day-to-day things, feeling like, do I have enough? And that's often, I think, when we're not taking the time to be grateful for what we do have and thinking about that. So as you trust God today, as you make that a daily practice, what you'll find over time is you have more peace and security, regardless of whether things are in abundance or things are difficult and tight. You're still going to have this sense of peace and security. So that's the T. Trust God, not money. And the S we said was spend less, save more. So the A, accountability. Seek accountability. The world wants us to believe that this is my money and it's nobody's business. I can do with it what I want. But really the truth is, when you invite others in, when you have community, not isolation, that community can act as guardrails. It can help make sure you stay on the right path, you're getting to the right destination. It can help you avoid mistakes and things that can happen. Proverbs 15 says, without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors, they succeed. Just reminding us, we can convince ourselves of all sorts of things, right? Some of you're old enough like me where you remember when the best thing you can do with your money to invest in is what? You can put in Beanie Babies, right? If you just buy these Beanie Babies, they're going to go up in value dramatically, and you're going to be that next millionaire. And yet you're like, why is this stuffed animal this great investment? But in the moment, so many people convince themselves this is what the best thing is. And yet if you had other people who were not into that craze, they probably would have told you, what are you thinking? That is stupid. Don't do that. But we can convince ourselves of all different things. And that's why having others around us, inviting others in is so important when it comes to financial decisions. The other thing is community acts as guardrails, helps keep us on track, keeps us from drifting off course with our life, our faith, our finances. 1 Timothy, Paul says it this way, but people who long to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many foolish and harmful desires that plunge them into ruin and destruction. I mean, notice all these descriptive words. They're going to plunge into ruin, into destruction. They're trapped. I mean, it's not a pleasant picture it's painting for those who pursue riches, who long to be rich. It says, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. And some people craving money have wandered from the true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrows. But you, Timothy, are a man of God. So run from all these evil things. Pursue righteousness and a godly life along with faith, love, perseverance, and gentleness. So you have Paul reminding Timothy, reminding him of the dangers that come with pursuing wealth, pursuing accumulation of more stuff, that it can shipwreck your faith if you're not careful. It can cause you to have these sorrows, these pains, these difficulties that you're not anticipating or expecting. And so what does he say to him? He says, instead of pursuing those things, pursue godliness, pursue growing in your spiritual walk, pursue these godly qualities of who you're becoming, pursue those things instead. And so think about in your life, who do you have like that you've invited to speak into your finances, to your spending, to your debt, to your savings, to your giving? Who have you invited and said, hey, I just want to be an open page with you because I know you're going to help me stay on track. This is a place where, in small group, we've encouraged all of our groups going through this study. God owns it all. The reason we did that is not because we just want you to talk about finances. It's because the people that are around you are going to keep you on track. And we've had some great conversations, I know, in the group that we're leading on Thursdays. But I would just encourage you, if you're not in a group or your group's not doing it, just see me. I'll get you stuff that you need. Do it with another family. But invite somebody in because it creates a place for these conversations to go, hey, I don't have it all together, but I want to help you, and I want you to help me so we can stay on track in these areas of our finances. The other thing I would just remind you about, too, is we know the people we're around are going to shape our spending decisions, right? I mean, if you're around somebody who's just a spender and is in all kinds of debt, they may say, hey, let's go on this vacation, this trip together. It's okay if you can't pay for it all now. Just put it on the credit card. You can pay for it eventually. But it's very different if you have a friend that says, hey, you're trying to pay off debt? Like, let's do something simple because I just want to hang out with you and spend time with you. It doesn't matter what we do and where we go. I mean, it's going to lead to different destinations of how it's going to affect your faith, your finances in the future. So accountability. Seek accountability and community in this area to have those guardrails to help you avoid decisions, unnecessary mistakes, I mean. So start. The R, release generously. Culture says if I give it away, I'm not going to have enough. I won't have enough if I give it away. And yet what we find is that giving breaks the grip that money has on our lives. It brings joy and blessing that's hard to describe if you've never done that. Giving is really the only antidote that I know of to materialism and to the consumer culture we're in. Because what does our culture say? Get more, hold on to more, have more. And yet really that doesn't lead to a place of freedom or peace, but it often just leads to trying to keep getting more and never being satisfied. The other thing to just be aware of is without generosity, you may be great at saving, but you can subtly drift into trusting money and into hoarding. And it's kind of that picture from Luke 16 that we looked at a few weeks ago of building bigger barns because you have more, rather than realizing, no, I have more, but it's also not just for me to have, but to give, to use to help others too. 1 Timothy 6 puts it this way about generosity. Command those who are rich in this present world. So before you think that's not me, really, when you look at the grand scheme of things in the world, that's pretty much all of us. We don't feel like we're rich, but we have a lot. So these are Paul's words to you and I. Those who are rich in this present world, don't be arrogant or put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and be generous and willing to share. In this way, they'll lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation in the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. So he says, be careful. If you have a lot, the tendency is you're going to drift to start trusting what you have, to find your hope in what you have, in riches and money, versus in the things God truly values. And notice the things that he truly values, the things that he's saying will be a treasure you're laying up for the future as this firm foundation in the coming age. What are the things he says? To do good, to be rich in good deeds, to be generous and willing to share. That the true measure of wealth shouldn't be how large is that bank account we have, but how generous are we being? How much are we meeting the needs of others, serving each other with these good deeds? How willing are we when a need comes up to say, yes, I want to meet that need? Those are the things it says that really matter. You know, one thing when I was reading this verse that made me think about is many of you in this room are very intentional when it comes to some aspects of your finances. For instance, many of you are probably very intentional when it comes to how much money you want to have when you get to retirement, or how much money you want to set aside each month for retirement. You're very intentional to go, I want to make sure it's this amount or it's this percent. That's what I'm aiming at. That's my goal. You do that maybe with your kids for college because you're like, I want to make sure they have something to help get them through college. But have you ever thought about a goal for your giving? To think about what would I love for my giving to look like now? And if my money outlasts me, the legacy it could leave that would touch the lives of others. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever spent some time with the Lord going, God, what would you have me do with what you've given me now in my giving? But also to be thinking about, if I have any money left, where do I want that to go? What do I want that to do? What legacy do I want that to have? It's a challenging thing to think about, but yet, let me give you a small example in giving. One of the things the scriptures talk a lot about is like in our giving, we should prioritize giving to the poor, giving to the local church, giving to missionaries, those who have never heard the good news, who are going and spreading that good news with others. That those are three of the places we should prioritize. So for my wife and I, one of the ways we try and prioritize the poor is we sponsor a kid through Compassion International. And what's interesting is we're giving $43 a month. You know, it's not a huge amount of money in the grand scheme of things, but it's still significant. It's $43 a month. But what that allows is it allows Compassion International to work through the local church overseas to provide food, education, medical care, and more important than all those things, to introduce that child to Jesus. It's a small investment. And as her and I were talking about this, what we realized is, you know, that adds up to about $9,000 if you started at birth, went to age 18. $9,000. And the thing that kind of was exciting to us as we talked about this is like, you know, if there's any money left, you know, down the road, hopefully not anytime soon, but down the road, if there's any money that we're dead, there's some money left. What would we want to have happen with that? You know, yeah, there's stuff we'd love to give to kids or grandkids, but so what if we left like $90,000 to Compassion International? That's 10 kids' lives that we could end up changing even after we're gone, who they're being impacted by our giving. We're leaving this legacy that's impacting future generations who then are going to impact others as well. That is just a small thing to consider and to chew on and to think about, is what kind of a legacy are you leaving? I came across this story that I found interesting. It was a guy named Ed Mickelson. He's a doctor in the UK, and as a kid, he heard all these stories from his parents about what missionaries do and about the need for people to go and tell others about Jesus. And so he just had this vision of, I'd love to go serve overseas. He went to medical school. He went overseas to kind of see the need firsthand. When he was there, he's like, man, I could make a big difference here. But when he was there, he felt like God really spoke to him. And one thing he saw when he was there is he saw how there was these local pastors who were going to plant churches in these tiny little villages where there was no churches. And many of these church planters were surviving off of about $80 a month. And what clicked in his mind is, what if I cut my lifestyle back and I gave to support these local pastors trying to start churches in these villages where there is none? Could I support 10? Could I support 20 of these? And it really just kind of excited him and got him thinking about, what legacy could I leave through my giving by intentionally giving to support these things that are happening? And I share that just because I hope it inspires ideas to be thinking about what is my long-term goal for my giving. A practical thing just to give you on the back of your handout. In a few weeks, we have this seminar on wills and trusts that our friends from Christian Trustmaker are doing. The primary reason we're doing that is because if you're not intentional to decide where your money's going to go when you're dead, trust me, the government would be happy to step in and decide where your money's going to go. And so it's a way for you as a steward to just say, hey, I want to be intentional to decide what's going to happen after I'm gone. What legacy, this money, finances, property, whatever it is, where it's going to go, who it's going to help, what difference it's going to make after I'm gone. The other thing I just want to say about generosity is this, that generosity changes you. You know, think about the last time you met a generous person who's grumpy. I mean, it's pretty rare. It's usually those are the people that are the most joyous because they've found the words of Jesus to be true, that it really is more blessed to give than to receive. And this is a lesson I know my wife and I, we've been trying to teach our kids. We have a 6 and 9-year-old boys, and if you've been here after service, you've probably seen them running all around, but little balls of energy. But the one thing we thought about a year and a half ago is how can we teach them the joy of giving? And so at Christmas, a year and a half ago, we said, hey, let's each take them to Five Below and give them $10 each to spend on their brother. And so we took them, they were excited, seeing all the toys, playing around with things. So they picked stuff out, we brought it home, we wrapped it, Christmas came, and you could just see their faces beaming because they were so excited to see their brother open these presents that they bought for their brother. The funny thing is we learned, okay, they're still learning because they bought things they wanted, not necessarily things their brother might want, but they've gotten better with last Christmas and birthdays too. But it was neat to just see the joy in their face as they realized it is so much better to give than to receive, that there's this joy and blessing that comes from that, and it changes you. This is something where you may not realize it, but as a community, as we do this together, it's changing people's lives. As we together pool our resources and give, what it does, it changes people's lives. When there's needs within our body, we're able to say, yes, let's meet that need because we want to be a church that does that. That we're able to meet needs in the local community. Like you saw in the video earlier, there's all these things coming up and going on where it's like, hey, this is your giving in action, as it allows us to do so many incredible things locally, but also supports our missionaries overseas as they're sharing the good news with those who don't know it yet. So release generously. That's really the challenge, is to think about how well are you doing that today? What kind of seeds are you planting in this area of your life? And then the last letter, T, train daily. Culture wants us to believe one choice doesn't matter. I'll start tomorrow. But yeah, what we've talked about more than once here that Greg's reminded us about is it's not what you do some of the time that really matters. It's what you do most of the time. That those choices you make most days of the week, most months of the year, year after year after year, they're going to compound. And like we said at the beginning, that it's going to be magnified as time goes by. Proverbs 20 puts it this way. The sluggard does not plow in the autumn. He'll seek at the harvest and have nothing. So you have this sluggard. It's really this foolish person that's being pictured. And really the picture it's giving us is he seems to be surprised that there's nothing to harvest. But why is there nothing to harvest? Because he didn't plow in the autumn. He didn't prepare the soil, plant the seeds, and so there's nothing to reap later. And he seems to be surprised by that. And that's why these daily things we do matters. One of the ideas we talked about in the small group study, if you're going through it, and it's kind of just stuck with me, so I want to share it with all of you if you haven't seen it. It's how really when we spend our money, every dollar tells a story of what we believe and value. Every dollar we spend tells a story about what we believe and value. So what kind of a story is your spending saying? What kind of a story is it writing? That's kind of the question and the challenge to really think about. And today my encouragement to you would be to think about, where do you need to start when it comes to these things? We covered a lot of ground, and so maybe you're thinking, you know what? I just need to start by getting my debt in check because I got way too many payments, I got way too much credit card debt, and I just need to start there. And you need to fight day after day after day. You need to invite others in to encourage you and keep you on track and to get that debt paid off. Because as you do that, you'll have margin. You'll be able to, instead of spending that in payments, to save it. And what you're doing is you're planting seeds of what you can reap later. Maybe it's in the area of giving, and you're just thinking, you know what, I just need to get started. I just need to start giving, or I need to maybe pick a percentage in giving, or maybe I need to grow in that, or maybe I need to make it a priority because I forget half the time to, do anything for giving. I found it encouraging. One of the areas I oversee at the churches, I oversee some of our finance department. And what I found encouraging is we have about 100 families in the church where you've just said, hey, I want to make this a priority, so I'm just going to set a recurring giving for giving to Olive Branch. And that's just a priority I want to have. I want to give. Some of you do it weekly, some monthly, some every other. But I just thought, hey, that's great that you've said this is a priority. I don't want this to get pushed to the side. I want to keep this in front of me. So I don't know what it is for you today, but I hope you'll take some time to consider and to think about, what has the Lord put on your heart? Because as time goes by, your decisions are going to be magnified as time goes by. And as I thought about what to leave you with, the one thing that came to my mind was this, is we have some incredible men and women in our church in their 60s, 70s, 80s, who really have embodied these principles, who have lived them out over decades upon decades upon decades. And I thought, what would be the things they might say to us, to inspire us, to encourage us, to keep us moving? And so I kind of wrote some of these words as if they were speaking to us, and I hope they'll encourage you wherever you're at. If you had told me in my 30s that I'd be living this way at 70, I probably would have laughed. Back then, I was anxious about money all the time. There was never enough. I compared myself to my neighbors, carried too much debt, and thought contentment would come with the next raise or the next purchase. But somewhere along the way, God got a hold of my heart. I began to believe what I had heard 1,000 times but never lived out. God owns it all, and I'm just the manager. That truth changed everything, and so we started small, giving a little, saving a little, living on less than we made. It felt like baby steps, but those baby steps over decades has carried us into freedom. Now in my 70s, I don't stress about bills or retirement. We're not wealthy by the world standards, but we have margin. When a medical bill comes, it doesn't crush us. When a missionary we love needs support, we say yes. When a neighbor's car breaks down, we can quietly help, and that freedom is priceless. If I could tell my younger self one thing, it would be this. Learn to say, I have enough. Build margin, not for your comfort, but for generosity. And over time, you'll find that joy doesn't come from what you keep. It comes from what you give and who you become. And one day you'll wake up and you'll realize this is what freedom feels like. Let me close this with some prayer. Jesus, just invite you as we sit here for a moment. Each family here, I know how much you love each person in this room. And so would you show them where they need to start, where they need to continue to do? Whether it's easy or whether it's hard, would you remind them that with you and with community, all things are possible? And so, God, we just ask for your help. As we look at our finances, you've given all of us quite a bit. We don't always feel like it, but we know you'll provide for what we need for that day, that week, that month ahead. And so would you remind each of us to focus on you as our provider and to just invite you to direct what you want to do with the money you've put in our hands. So God, thank you for our time today. We love you. We pray this in your name. Amen. If you guys want to stand, the band's going to lead us. And as they do, there'll be some of the prayer team kind of up front on both sides. If there's something going on in your life, would love for you just to come up, ask for prayer. We would love to walk with you in that.